The governor has issued executive orders requiring individuals to remain in their homes except for certain activities, closing many businesses to the public and prohibiting any gatherings which do not comply with its terms. Because of the risk to the public that would arise from continued in-person meetings pursuant to NCGS 166A.19-19.24, the city is converting Raleigh Transit Authority meetings to be remote electronic format for the duration of the state of the emergency. All votes will be counted by roll call. All right, I'm going to count the roll for us to do introductions. Please signify by saying present. Nathan Spencer.
Present.
Karen Renge.
Present.
Lawrence Carter. Sarah Prado. Jennifer Truman.
Present.
Brian Burnett. Joshua Gill.
Present.
LaPonda Edmondson.
Present.
And our alternate, Ms. Jennifer Hoverstan. Also our city council liaison, Councilman Corey Branch. And I, of course, Tallulah Payo-Mokaye is present as well. All right, do we have any additions to the agenda today?
Madam Chair, I do have one small added item.
All right, what's that?
At the end of the meeting, I would just like to talk briefly about the upcoming retreat and new member orientation. We do have a date that looks like it may work, but we certainly are not looking for everyone to chime in today on whether that date will work. Anyway, I'll just provide a little bit of information on format for those meetings as well as the date.
All right, thank you. Like you said, we'll plug that in after the route committee debriefing. Do we have any public comments today? Looks like we have about 8 minutes to 4.
This is Andrea Epstein. We do have 3 folks that have joined for public comment. Would you like me to start now with them?
Let's go ahead and, well, yeah, let's do that. So then we can just kind of get into the rest of the meeting and go into a flow.
Okay, so we have 3 folks. The first person is Terrence Dewberry. Terrence, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. And thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Terrence Dewberry at 8201 Old Deer Trail, Raleigh, North Carolina. And I won't be before you long. I come to you as a concerned citizen about the future of our transit industry. And it's just based on the information we've gathered recently and the non-expansion of routes that's been delayed. We have concerns. I have a concern of the future of our transit, and not only our transit throughout the United States. Some of the old true methods are not working nowadays. We have a driver shortage. And as you're all aware, we haven't been able to expand due to for scheduled service to be increased on Sunday. And I don't know if it's all the fault of one particular agency, but maybe as a whole, the transit industry. We got to begin to think outside of the box. Why we're not able to train and retain operators? We've got to. We went through this pandemic, and we're paddling along, but it doesn't look good. We may gain 1 employee and lose 2. We recently had a senior driver resign due to whatever circumstances that's existing right now. And why did that person resign? Why are others considering changing occupations? And the standard method of the transit system may not work long term. So we're going to have to think outside the box and maybe relax some standards increase some pay for less desirable work shifts. We need to do the incentives that have been suggested for over a year as far as time and a half to rejuvenate the workforce. It's just disheartening because no one seems to have the answer during this pandemic of how to keep service. So these are suggestions that we've made prior to, and I don't think it's a total situation with management. It has to come from the city to give them the authority to do some of the things that's required to keep these buses moving. And so we're not trying to throw the management company under the bus when they don't have the authority to do all these things, or maybe the funds. But these are desperate times. We can't just say, well, here's the budget, and let the union and the company hash it out, because it's creating a worse working environment, and we need to service the city. So we've got to put something on the table about how to incentivize the workforce, not only in this industry, but throughout the country and other industries as well. There's a shortage. How do we attract quality employees? How do we retain quality employees? Unless we, as a team, whether you team with the company and say, hey, we need to do this, or you team the company and the union team together and say, we need to do this, but we need the authority and the funds to make sure that we're able to service our clients. We are not even able to service the current service we provide. So we're postponing expansion, and we've brought this to your attention over 2 months ago. The employees that are here now may be looking elsewhere, and we don't want to lose quality employees. People have sacrificed throughout the years to gain the tenure of having, the status of maybe preferable routes. But if we're losing the tenured employees and we're losing the new employees, something's got to change. And I'm begging you all to try to make this change in order to service the transit industry in Raleigh, North Carolina. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terrence. It is very concerning, but I do believe that it's something that's going on across the country. Does anybody on staff want to comment or chime in on what you know as far as trends across the country when it comes to employment? David?
Yes, so this certainly is something that is nationwide right now. I would say that in fast growth regions, it can be even more difficult, and certainly we are in a fast growth region. Within the Triangle area, we are certainly experiencing this, not just Go Raleigh. Pretty much every transit system, whether it's a general public transit agency or school transportation agency or a paratransit transit agency, we're experiencing at every level when it comes to looking for qualified individuals and especially CDL qualified individuals that are interested in a transit career or a driving career. So I would say that it's not, as Mr. Dewberry stated, it's also not just limited to transit. There are other industries that are certainly being impacted, and there are other areas within the city of Raleigh that are being impacted as far as hiring and retention. I know within transportation, we have many different segments of transportation employees, and transit is not the only one that's experiencing some significant hardships in regards to finding employees currently. So I would say that, one of the things that is out there is certainly us, we'll talk about this more, but our pulling back of some service expansion in the short term as we hope to get through this, what we hope, again, is a short-term labor shortage until we get better. But we'll be talking more about that later. But again, that's just kind of my comments, not only nationwide and not only just transit.
Thank you for that. But to his other point, is there anything else that we can do? Like you said, like the incentives, like things of that nature. I know there's not much we can do if we're not getting applicants, right? But what can we do to kind of, excuse me, silence, incentivize that? Is there anything that we can do, is what I'm saying?
I mean, we'll certainly continue to look at things that we can do. And we'll be glad to report that back out to the board. Let's bring that, let staff look at those measures. Certainly when we think about that, or I think about that in a city context, the city's looking at every department and every employee within the city of Raleigh, and making sure that all of those are valued equally. And we certainly want to, think about our transit employees across the region, and how can we address this not only locally but regionally, because it is an important issue. So again, we will be doing work in the coming weeks with our regional partners, as well as we'll be happy to try to see what other options might be available and report back next month.
Madam Chair?
Thank you. Yes, Nathan? Is that Nathan?
This is Nathan Spencer. Route Committee talked a little bit about this, and I'm happy to dip back into that when we get to reports. But I did want to just say, I think we're all, from this pandemic, we've all changed perspective on how much time we spend working and how much time we spend focused on things that aren't necessarily our family and friends. So I think this goes back to our effort within the RFP to really try to for a management contract, to find a company that will treat employees really, really well, because I think that beyond everything is going to make it easier for us to keep and retain our workforce.
Thank you, Nathan. Does anybody else have any comments?
I just want to circle back and say, yes, I agree. We need to find a management agency that will treat employees well, but we also, from the city standpoint, need to be looking at what we can do to help the management company retain workers, from wages to benefits to that kind of thing.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Nathan. Karen?
Karen Renge, I did wonder, I am wondering, I mean, obviously I concur this is a big challenge overall. Is this something that has been discussed with the city council, any staff reports, that, et cetera?
So council is currently aware of kind of our ongoing status, and I don't think that we put it this way, we'll be providing them with information in the next week, just as a more of an update on how we're making sure that we can have continuity of service as we continue forward. But generally, as far as labor conditions are concerned, yeah, they're very aware of that.
Terrence made a comment about maybe relaxing standards. Is there a way that we can, incentives, increase pay? I know that we were working on the pay piece. Is there any way that we can, in the next week or in between now and our next meeting, have a plan together that we can present to council, that staff can present to council, explaining the issue and trying to see if there's some relaxations that can be put in that might help while we, work this from multiple angles?
Yeah, I would say that I would need to look into that, and certainly we can report back at the next committee meetings in October.
Okay, let's do that. But I also think the time is of the essence, with this situation. I don't want us to kind of keep going off to the next month if we're losing drivers that quickly. So if there's anything, I know that you said that you'll be presenting to them within the week, if there's a bug that could be put in their ear, if something's not put together in time, but just letting them, like kind of asking them how they feel about some of the things that they can do, if that's possible.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just quickly, Terrence mentioned time and a half, like making sure that I didn't quite understand what he was saying. I just wanted to make sure that if our workers are doing overtime, that they are getting time and a half.
That is correct.
Just clear that up.
Thank you. Terrence, are you still there?
We're here. What the proposal was over a year ago, when this pandemic first hit, was 10 demands that we presented to management, and part of that was that our working conditions have changed. We wasn't hired facing necessarily life or death situations. I was informed right now that we have a coworker that is not doing well with the pandemic, with the COVID, and they're driving scared, and reasonably so. We don't know what the known variables are when we are loading passengers, which you all passed a full capacity motion last month, and it comes with mixed reaction. We want to service the public. It is our desire, I think, that we have excellent employees still there, but we want to do it as safe as possible. And I failed to mention, and I'll just, if I may, put this in. Initially, my conversation from last month's meeting was going to be about the circulation system. We do have a prototype that I think you all was going to research in order to, with the air filtration. We presented that right at the end of Ms. Parker's tenure at Go Raleigh, when it was unable to do that. What the people at Virginia Tech, and going off base a little bit, and some other researchers have done, was suggested that we increase the size of the filter, and then use ultraviolet ray to kill 99.9% of the contaminants that's coming back through the filtration system in the bus. That will cause a little retrofitting on the maintenance part, but that is the recommendation, and that has been the recommendation, I know, for the air filtration system for at least 5-6 months. So getting back on task, the initial ask was to relax standards as well, because we've got people that mentally are burnt down. We're working, some driver had 100 hours overtime in a 2-week period. That's 180 hours they're working. And during this pandemic, also, we asked for the time that is actually worked, not overtime, to be time and a half, so that you can kind of catch up with the present pay, and keep competitive with other agencies or other locations. That's been a national ask from ATU and other agencies throughout this pandemic. We've got extra pay for less desirable runs. We're trying to attract new people. For them to miss weekends with their family, work late shifts with odd days off. It is what we are. We can't, make it a 5-day-a-week, 9-to-5 bus schedule, but we can try to, with the funds that are available, incentivize those lower seniority people, as well as reward the ones that are coming in and working these long hours to keep, people moving. So these are actual things that was done initially. Some of those 10 items that we listed, management has adopted. We asked for a mask, we asked for PPEs, we asked for social spacing and social distancing. All these things, except for the money part, has come into play. And it was, in hindsight's 2020, it was spot on. It was spot on in March of 2020, stating that these are the things that we see coming with this pandemic, and we need to try to be ahead of the game. And of course, with budget restraints and unpredictable circumstances, because we could have said, well, it's going to only last 6 months, whatever. But this thing is here to stay for a while. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do to keep this transit moving? With the cancellation of service that we're doing, and I understand it, we get it, but there's people right now that hasn't been notified that a bus is not going to come. 70X is not going to run as posted. The Crabtree is not going to run as posted. How can we look for the future or service to what we already have? And we haven't expanded. Like I stated, we've got drivers that actually work 100 hours overtime in a 2-week period. What are you going to do for their mental health? What are they going to do for the body? What is going to do if they go out and have a mistake? And we're trying to work our butt off for the city or for our passengers, but over time, it's going to increase the risk. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Terrence. You're absolutely right. When you were saying that, my thought went to the mental health of the operators. What are we doing when it comes to that? I mean, I believe that, if we still have CARES funds, I know that can go towards some assistance in this and maybe even go towards padding some of the pay. So can we do that?
I can barely hear you.
I was talking to David.
Oh.
Madam Chair, I don't have those answers right now. We'll be happy to get that information and bring it back to a committee in October.
Okay, that's all.
Madam Chair, this is Jennifer.
Yes.
I just wanted to repeat what you just said. I think it's really important that we look at the CARES Act money that we have as an option to provide as a city more funding to our bus drivers. Like other municipalities are doing that. We need to have staff look into that and make those recommendations forward after we look into it. But we need to do it quickly. My husband's an essential worker. He's at the airport on the line doing these things, working these hard hours, doing these things. I sympathize entirely with our operators from a personal perspective. And we need to be doing what we can to take care of them, keep them safe, but also keep them paid and feeling good about the work that they do.
Madam Chair, can I clarify one thing?
Yes, please.
We want whatever benefits be available for everyone. Meaning that we've got utility workers exposed. We've got mechanics exposed. They've got to clean up these buses and they're exposed as well. It's not just that bus operators have been tested positive for COVID. We've had maintenance workers tested positive for COVID, and they're sharing the load. Whatever happens on our bus, they've got to clean up. They're exposed, and we can't cause that division in the workforce to say, well, it's just the bus operators. No, we're a team. It's bus and maintenance, and we can't do anything without them, and they can't do anything without us. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just remember that the city has a large number of frontline workers across every job profession you can imagine. And so obviously we're very interested in, trying to make sure that there's some equity across that realm as well. So again, sometimes it's a little more difficult than it seems, but we'll certainly look at this and be back in October at a committee with what we find.
What are you going to present to City Council next week?
We certainly would just make sure that they're up to date on all of our service cancellations of expansion. Certainly, we haven't had any impacts to scheduled services. So just to clarify from the earlier statement, we don't have any published schedules that aren't being met. We did not publish new schedules, which would have had expanded services. So that's kind of where we are currently.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Nathan.
Can I just clarify, David, have we had any missed trips in the past month due to the ability for our operators to be available?
I would say that we've always had missed trips pre-COVID and during COVID, depending upon the circumstance. However, I would have to ask our general manager if he's on, if he has any specific information regarding any excessive missed trips during this time period.
Good afternoon, everyone. Byron Brunt, General Manager, Go Raleigh. I would have to say, Mr. Spencer, addressing your question, we have had missed trips due to the operator shortage. I would not consider it excessive. I guess that's a relative term. Also, I apologize, I wouldn't have any hard data for you on that this afternoon or evening. But yes, certainly we have missed trips as opposed to the reduction in service other agencies are experiencing. That's just the circumstance that we're in currently.
Thank you.
Thank you, but I do want to make a point, well, 2 points. To David's point, to David, if we're meeting with city council within the week, I know that we won't have a full plan put together then, but I think it's an opportunity for us to talk from the transit perspective about covering the transit workers and seeing if there is some support that we can and put the bug in their ear. I know that the plan is going to be put together, but I think the ball being in motion prior to a month from now, when we have our committee meetings, would kind of make this, because then we have to wait until November, maybe December, maybe January before something is actually executed. So us kind of working on this in between, I think would be helpful. And to Mr. Bryant, just a really quick point, because I feel like we asked at the RTA meeting last month for a report from management about missed trips, about COVID impact, about everything that's going on with the buses. And if I'm mistaken, please, one of the other authority members, please correct me, but I feel like we asked for this last month.
Madam Chair, I believe that is correct.
I certainly apologize for that, Madam Chair. So to my knowledge, I don't recall that, and again, my apologies. So you would like a report on missed trips?
We know that there was, I mean, we kind of talked about this for the past couple meetings, that we know that the performance measures are at the end of our agenda, but we wanted it presented to us at our authority meetings so we can understand the numbers. That includes missed trips, any accidents, incidents, good things, bad things, like just having the performance, and especially with COVID impact, kind of presented to the authority at our meetings.
Okay, Madam Chair, we can certainly get that together. Yes, so I'll write something up and get that clarified by you. And we can certainly make sure that that occurs at a meeting or our next meeting and at future meetings after that as well, if that's what the board likes.
Yes, please. But just if we can also put a bug in the city council's ear so that we can kind of move this quicker, because we want to make sure, especially from the mental health perspective, if there's anything, I know there's going to have to be some research done, and maybe that's something we can discuss at the route meeting next month, coming up with some ideas about how we can support all of our transit employees, especially from the mental health side of things. Thank you for that. And thank you, Terrence. We will be getting on this. Please hold us, keep us honest, please. And I know that we have one more public meeting. One more comment.
I think two more.
Two more public comments.
We have, this is Andrea Epstein. We have two more. The next person we have is Dwight Spencer. Dwight, can you
Hello,
hear us?
Hello, how's everybody doing? Madam Chair, I hope everybody's doing well. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, thank you, Dwight. We're doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, and I'm not going to be as kind as Mr. Dewberry, and I'm not going to be as politically correct as Mr. Dewberry. We all know that there's a shortage of bus operators all over this state, and first of all, I'm executive director with North Carolina Transit Workers Association. We are a transit education association and not a union, and we do very strong research. So I'm not going to be as kind as he has been with y'all. We all know, and you all heard this over the last couple of months, why bus operators and other transit workers are leaving. They are leaving because of their present management. They are poorly managed. They get poorly, they be treated poorly by the operation manager, the assistant general manager, and now the present general manager. They are neglecting their issues and concerns that they have, and they are a very important part of essential worker to this city and county, and they have been neglected for quite a while. And over the past 5 or 6 years, we all know that it's time for a transit change in TransDev, okay? Now, the city knew, city transit staff knew there was a shortage of bus operators when this Glenwood route was this being developed, and now they're talking about it being delayed until January. We are hoping that TransDev is not here in January to carry out that delay, number one. And number two, we feel that, the passengers, the citizens are being neglected because this was already set. And I think that, the city transit and the city of Raleigh owe this to the citizens of every community and every part of the city. And I think the customer service is very poorly because of the present management that we have. And I want to touch on a couple of more things very quickly. There was just last month when Mr. Byron Bryan said that he was not aware. That's his mistake. I was at the meeting a couple of months ago, Madam Chair, when you asked for a report on safety and everything else from TransDev, because they never gives a report at all. And I don't think that Mr. David Eaton, our assistant director, need to be writing reports for TransDev. TransDev general manager and their management staff should be writing their own reports with y'all approval. I think that is not right as a city administrator taking up the work and the slack for a contractor that the taxpayers' money is paying. That is not right. I'm not in agreement with that. And it was 11 trips missed just last week. If you want an accurate number, 11 missed trips was missed just last week to the general manager and to David Eaton and to the Raleigh Transit Authority. You had supervisors driving the buses, whereas they actually could not even resolve any bus operators' problems, because they were out driving buses trying to meet the routes for the citizens. So that was 11 trips missed, and it was more than that. I didn't get the whole accurate number, but Mr. Byron Bryan is not being honest as far as that's concerned. And I think that, we should have been getting a report from this management company 2 years ago. But evidently, city transit staff act more like the attorney for TransDev than the lead contractor who's paying the bill to TransDev. And I just think that, the management, and then some of the bus operators leaving because of pay. UNC Hospital housekeeping starting pay is $15 an hour. This is something that the Transit Association is going to be working very hard with city leaders all across the state that do not have management. And to those who do have management, we're going to be working with legislators all across the state, to increase the starting pay for these bus operators, because they do have a very important job, and transit is a very important piece of the transportation puzzle here in the entire state as well as all across the country. Right now, Go Triangle has the highest paid starting pay at $17 an hour. Come January, Go Cherry will be the highest paid starting pay in this region, starting off with $20 an hour come January. I mean, Raleigh has got to do better than what we are doing. We have got to do better. And I think we'll do better when we get rid of the present management that serves the citizens of this beautiful city of ours. So, lastly, I want to ask the question, why didn't anyone bid on our contract at the date that it was supposed to be turned in? That do not say a lot to the city of Raleigh. I think we had about 4 or 5 or maybe 6 bidders, including the present one, TransDev, that came and did the walkthrough at the headquarters on Poole Road. But no one submitted bids, including TransDev. No one submitted bids. And I think, Madam Chair and authority members, that our citizens and the bus operators and the behind the scenes transit workers deserve better than what they are getting when it comes to our transit. It's just like they are being neglected. It's
I
just
might
like, and I know that
on
we
that
have.
one just real quickly because our proposals were originally due on the 14th, which hasn't occurred yet. And we did extend that to the 21st. So I'm not sure exactly where that information is coming from, but we do have an open bid and proposal process. That's all I can say because that is an open process. But our proposals are due the 14th, and that was extended by addendum to the 21st.
Did it move back again?
It was moved once from the 14th to the 21st.
Okay, my information said September the 10th, but why isn't, if I may ask, I know that we have a different type of contract, which is a management contract, correct? Strictly management contract, correct? Mr. Eaton?
Madam Chair, did you want me to answer?
Yes, and it is a management contract.
Okay. And I know that there was some concerns about the management contract and the OM contract, which is operation management. Okay. And some of the companies had a problem with that because of the risk and the liability of it. So if some of this has to be changed and rearranged or whatever, or discussed legally or whatever, how the way it should be done, I think the citizens, transit staff and authority members, I think the citizens deserve this just to get rid of Transdev. They deserve this to be under better management, because I know for the last couple of months, there are a lot of things going on with our transit. And to just continue to talk about the same thing over and over and over with this particular management, it is just heartbreaking. It is disgusting. And we all know what type of management that we have overseeing our transit system. And it's time for a change. And to answer the question is City Council aware of everything that's going on? Mr. Eden, Raleigh City Council is not aware of everything that's going on. I am very in touch with that council. And they are not aware of what's a lot of stuff that's going on because they have been misled. But we have tried our best as an advocate group to make them aware. And one of the things that we want to do is to work with our city transit to make it the best transit it can be. But it cannot be the best transit it can be when you got a company like we got now that is not treating their employees right, that's neglecting everything and misleading. And then when transit staff doing all the work for transit. I mean, it just can't happen. It just cannot happen. I think we need to get beyond this now. The present contract expires in December, if I'm not mistaken. The present contract expires in December. So this means we got to put all this stuff back out to bid again. Put it all back out to bid again to see who's going to submit their bids in. So
Madam Chair, I apologize. This is Nathan Spencer.
Yes, Nathan.
Just to translate something real quick. I understand what Dwight is saying, but I wanted to translate for everyone. Because I ran into this a few years ago and I just learned about this change now. So we have a management contract, which means that we pay a company to manage everything, but we pay for the payroll. We give them a set amount of money equal to payroll. They pay payroll. The industry apparently is moving to this area called the O&M, which is what Dwight called it, operation and maintenance, where basically the cities give complete control of everything about the transit system outside of planning and a few other things to a company, which then runs it. And it was first done by a management consulting company out in Toronto about 12 years ago. And now it's like industry standard because they charge the city a certain amount of money and then they can decide how to pay the workers. So they can pay them nothing if they wanted to. And sort of, it gives up all this control. So I just wanted to very carefully just because I think there's Dwight making some interesting points, but I wanted to be sure that we define what we're dealing with.
Thank you for that. So then by that standard, if we had an O&M contract and say TransDev was the one holding it right now, would be a bigger issue possibly with
That
just
is absolutely
compared to the issue that's going on. That makes sense. And Dwight, you said, you made a lot of great points, and I think that we are doing what we can in some measure, especially with the RFP, to see what we can do about management, get new management, get a new contract with current or whatever the case may be. But that's one piece that we are doing. And I want to say that to tie your point to Dewberry's point, the city council is going to be who's going to decide whether or not we can increase pay, whether or not we can give incentives and use the care money. Am I correct about that, David? Just making sure that I'm saying the right thing as I'm saying it.
So any type of budget amendment, depending on the threshold of that budget amendment, would have to be approved by council. That is correct.
Okay.
It does depend upon the size, but council does adopt the budget. That is correct.
Okay. So then if we are doing what we can on this end as the RTA, it would be better, especially if you're talking to city council members, to make sure that you're holding them accountable also. Because the final decision comes from there, not just that you keep them up on what's going on here and whether they know something or not. They ultimately are the policymakers, right? So they're going to be the ones that's going to decide if we can increase the budget to be able to give time and a half for, a regular time like Dewberry asked, or use any funds that's going to be able to apply to solving some of these issues. So I'm not absolving the RTA of any responsibility here, but I am saying that as you talk to city council, and as I'm asking David to do it and put the bug in their ear, that you light a fire under them as well to help transit. Dwight?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Hello? Okay. Yeah, our team can do that, Madam Chair, and authority members, because I think it's very important. And we will, and I think, and to believe in my heart, I don't have to think, I know that most of the council, including the mayor, is in very strong support of our transit workers. And, and then Mr. Dewberry did make one point, we can't only focus on the bus operators, but we have to focus on the behind the scenes transit workers. And I have blasted the bus operators as saying, because the bus operators got to learn to step up to the plate and allow the city and allow y'all to see that they have very strong concern about this management and strong concerns about other things that's not being done, to the best of their interest. So I have blasted them as well, because I feel like we as an advocate group, our duty is to work with transit, with every city transit and across the state, to make sure that the transit workers are treated fairly. And also, but we have to put the responsibility on some of the operators, and including the union, because a lot of this stuff could have been resolved if the union would have stepped up to the plate and addressed a lot of these issues and not be so politically correct when they're addressing it. A lot of these things could have been resolved, and which would have kept the NCTAA out of it. But, but it is what it is. We got to work together as a team. And I think our transit workers who serve the citizens of Raleigh and Wake County, I think they give great service, and I think that we need to treat them as well, and not only them, but other essential workers, sanitation workers and other essential workers as well. I think they all need to be deserved to be treated fairly and get compensated what they're supposed to be compensated during this serious time of our life. But lastly, I want to say this before I leave. I do want, and I have encouraged the council members and the mayor, the city manager, and I want Mr. David Eaton to hear me very clearly. We will hold transit staff accountable. And I think that now this is a great time. We don't need to keep putting stuff off and coming back, because I want to see the authority talk about other things and moving forward with our transit system. Because I did myself personally a little survey. in every authority of every transit management in some parts of the state, we have the most discussion on a management than any of these other cities across the state. That's not good. That is not good at all. We have the most discussion on our management, who we are paying, than about 4 cities or towns that I have contacted and talked to. That's not a good thing. That is not a good thing. And so I just say that this transit will not be able to move forward. This transit will not be able to go in a different direction, transit authority members and transit staff, until we do get a new management firm in here that can retrain these bus operators and transit workers all over again, and that we can move forward, and still hold the new company accountable. But it cannot happen. Every manager at Go Raleigh headquarters on Poole Road got to be replaced in order to make that happen. And the bus operators and the transit workers deserve some relief over there, because it's a hot mess on Poole Road, a very hot mess. Thank you so much, and I ask that all of you continue the good work that you're doing in representing the bus operators and transit workers, and continue to be safe. Thank you, Madam Chair and authority members.
Thank you for your comments, Dwight. Any change requires collaboration. It requires a multi-effort. So we are doing our part, and we thank you for coming to give comments, and we ask that you also give that same energy to City Council to make sure that this happens as well. We have one more person in public comment.
Yes, this is Andrea Epstein. We have Candace McDonald. Candace, can you hear us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment regarding it, to kind of piggyback off of Dwight and Dewberry with the situation as far as our safety. I'm a current bus operator, and with our safety, which across the board regarding trying to drive, doing overtime, dealing with the stress of not only just the pandemic, but also our safety driving with traffic, the expansion, the whole nine. That needs to be strongly considered when you expanding, letting the number of people onto the bus, and with this COVID and everything going on, with the protection barriers and stuff that has been in place, it's still not enough. When you think about it mentally, we drive and don't know what we're being exposed to and everything else, and then you open it up and people get on there and they're not respecting the rules, they're not respecting the operator, they're not respecting the supervisors. We've had supervisors threatened with knives and different things. And in a total, when you talk about the mental breakdown of the operator, that's not being considered. Like our time off is not being necessarily honored completely for us to, be able to digest this whole pandemic. We've been working nonstop through this, and all of us are grateful to, still be employed and still be able to go get a check for our families and stuff. But when you talk about the compensation and then the other elements that are thrown in with this, our mental health needs to be considered, and how we can even afford the mental health or to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, dealing with everything that comes with the public transportation. You're expanding this service and giving the go ahead for different things, but none of the operators are being, our ideas and different things. We out here every day in this. We see what's going on. We know what could help make it better for the citizens and for the ridership and the workforce and everything else. But it's like our voices are being muted, and no matter how much we try and raise our voices or bring up a issue or anything, it's almost like, oh well, like Eatman keeps referring to, we'll get back to it, we'll table that, we'll schedule another appointment. But when is something going to actually be addressed so that you don't have people breaking down? When you have a senior operator who's been there for over 10 years, almost 20 years plus, that's leaving, I don't know what the issue was, but that speaks high volumes. You might expect that when you look at paperwork and everything, but when you got people behind desks trying to analyze things and making decisions for us, and it's not beneficial for the service. And that, I feel like that needs to be considered for us as far as our mental. When we have run picks that aren't being honored, different rules that aren't being honored, and you try and work with staff and work with different, people to try and come to a happy medium, and it's just nothing is being resolved. Nothing is being resolved. Everything is just keep getting pushed back, getting pushed back. When is something going to be actually addressed and resolved so that we can move forward? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I was just pausing to make
Oh.
sure to not interrupt you.
Oh yeah, that was my. It's about the safety, the main thing, and that's a big thing that this management company does push is safety, 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 safety. Safety is a broad, it could be a broad spectrum when you're looking at everything. So I just want it to be considered, and I bring it to the Transit Authority because it seems like when we bring it to y'all, it raises the awareness, and it doesn't feel like we're just being brushed under the rug, or just passed off until the next day or the next meeting or whatever the situation is. Like, we just want some type of resolution and not feel like we're being threatened or intimidated about our jobs, or we feel like we don't have a voice. Nobody's listening. Nobody hears us.
That's fair. You have a right. You have a right to feel safe in your workplace.
Right.
Madam Chair, this is Karen Renge. Candace, could you give us an example of what you mean when you said you need a resolution? Like, what do you mean by we need a resolution? A resolution, is it you feel like you need a new safety plan, or what is it that you're looking for?
Well, for instance, well, there's several things that I can handle, but specifically like opening up, to where we have more than 16 passengers on the bus. That's a big issue because, of course, the pandemic, and of course, we want to be able to provide service to all of the passengers that are needing a ride. So we know these citizens, we pick them up every day. We're dropping them off where they need to be. We know who's riding, but you have ones who are up there. When we had 16 passengers, we have ones who are up there riding around, sleeping, causing disturbances, threatening bus drivers, interrupting the service, who are not going anywhere. And we have to pass up Miss Merle, who goes to work every day, rides this route every day, and she can't get on the bus because we are capacity. So you open the capacity up, but the real issue is not that, it's overcapacity or you can't pick up no more than 16. That's not the issue. The issue needs to be addressed of the abuse of the system. It's like a welfare system of the bus ridership. And we feel like daycare providers, adult daycare providers, when we have to focus on traffic, focus on our health, focus on making sure the passengers who some of them refuse to wear masks. And it's like, if you don't care about yourself, please just protect everybody else. We're on this bus all day long, and we want to feel protected and know that we're not being exposed to anything, but we can't force anybody to put a mask on. Call a supervisor, and the supervisor's getting threatened. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, who is going to enforce that? You must wear a mask or no ride. We have passengers who just was like, I'm not putting it on, or just keep pulling it down, pulling it down. Other passengers, hey, they don't have a mask on. It's an interruption of the process, and we're trying to pay attention to make sure we're not running red lights, we're not running over people, we're not, running into cars, being safe, and that weighs on your mental, especially if you've been working 13 hours, 14 hours plus a day, 6 days a week to try and make sure the service is being performed for the city. There's so many different elements, and it's like our hands are tied because God forbid you say something and then somebody call in and they have more rights than we do. They call in and say, oh, well, you did this, or the driver said this, or the driver said that. And that's overlooked because it's like, oh, well, your voice was raised a little too high for the octave. But it's like, I got a big engine sitting up here and I can't hear. I'm talking through a mask. Okay, I raised my voice. But the point is the mask wasn't on, or the person was interrupting the service or yelling or threatening somebody or whatever the situation is. And I know this is public transportation. You're going to run into situations. But when you're dealing with a deadly virus and we're being exposed to this and we're trying to just get home to our families and provide a paycheck. So that's one example of safety. And there is no resolution that we have had yet for this situation. It's just like, oh, open up the doors and, fill the bus up. So now we still have to deal with all the issues plus more people. This pandemic is not a joke, and it's not a joke for these drivers and operators while we're on this bus.
Do you have any suggestions around what we can do, what transit can do as far as helping you all with the mental health aspect of this?
Well, some things are contractual. So, having a day off or having a sick time or whatever, of course you have to reserve it because you only have so many hours, you get so many hours a month, and that's contractual. And, we don't have a such thing as mental health days or, necessarily breathe. A lot of people overexhaust themselves trying to do overtime, one, to help service the issue of the routes not being serviced or not having enough drivers, but also to get a decent paycheck. A lot of drivers, especially newer drivers, coming in at $15, $16 an hour, they're trying to put food on the table. We don't qualify for these programs that are out here to help people underpaid, So we got to try and meet the bill. And a lot of people have to worry about sending their kids somewhere, and everything has gone up since COVID. We didn't get, the CARES Act fund that I heard across the globe, it was issued, incentives we got one in the beginning of the COVID when we had AB schedule, we had a 5% increase, and they cut it off on us. And other companies, surrounding companies, had gotten like, a $1,500 or something. I'm not sure about the number, but we're not being compensated enough to take the pressure off of us of overworking ourselves, which cause exhaustion and stress. Our operators have personal issues that we have to deal with. We have to set that on the table, put that on the back end, and focus while we're on that job, while we're behind that wheel. And safety comes, from, I don't have a suggestion because of the contracts in place and what we are allowed to do, but there is nothing that's even being offered or considered to us either for those measures. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you have to, I know everything is like black and white, lawyers and, doctrines and all this kind of stuff, but sometimes you just got to have a little humanity and morality when dealing with people. We are still people. We are not robots.
What can we do, David? I don't want us to, I know that we have another meeting next month and all of that, but I don't want us to, or anyone to feel like we're kicking the can. And at some pace that is the pace that we're getting to. I think with addressing this, I think we are doing what we can as an authority, the contract, things of that nature, but what can we do in the meantime to support our operators and not just the operators, but our transit workers?
David, if I can interject real quickly.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair and Board. With regard to Ms. McDonald's concern about the mental health, we're aware of these things on the management team. It's difficult, some of the things that we have used in the past and would like to continue using during the COVID protocols. However, we are moving back to our safety meetings later this month. And along with that, we're looking at possibly next month bringing in our EAP group. So we do have an EAP group that we contract with that is always available to the operators for counseling sessions or any issues they may be having. We're looking at bringing them on site to do large sessions for this particular issue because it is an issue.
And
I'm sorry.
Just really quick, would that be a consistent group therapy thing, or is that a one-time thing?
We'll have to look into how the operators respond to it. Initially, that will probably be a one-time thing. If it's successful and beneficial to the operators, and that'll be based on their feedback, then that's something that we can do on a routine basis.
Can that be opened up to all transit workers and not just the operators, but like they said, the maintenance and all of that type of thing too?
So that's always the case. So again, this is already available. We just don't bring these folks on site for large group sessions, but it is available. It's the employee assistant program, so it's available to all Go Raleigh employees.
Okay. Nathan?
Thank you. This is Nathan Spencer. Mr. Bryant, I love the idea of the counseling. My difficulty is if our operators are working 13-hour days and they need some mental health, they're not going to be able to take that mental health during the time that they're supposed to be behind the wheel, are they? Because we don't have the staff to substitute. So are they going to be asked to spend personal time doing that, or is it time that they get paid to be able to go and take that time to speak to someone, either group or individually?
So certainly individually, EAP is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The group sessions will be offered multiple times a day and throughout a week. With regard to that, I'm not sure if that will be paid time. That might be something that is done or available for operators at the beginning, end, or in between shifts. Many of our operators have what are called split shifts with hours of free time in between.
Just to follow up, I know we call it free time because that's kind of the industry term, but I can imagine that that's not how these operators feel. I mean, that's the time that they get to be able to go grocery shopping before the kids get home, the end of their shift, or before, to run to a doctor's office or something like that. We need to figure this out, because we can't be trying to help them by adding another responsibility to them to figure out. If we're already putting pressure on them to fill the hole because we don't have enough staff, which is, I understand, a nationwide issue. But if we're already putting pressure on them to fill that hole, then to ask them to take time that they would otherwise take to do something for themselves or their family for their mental health is a lot to ask. And we need to figure out how to manage some of that. And maybe that means that we need to adjust schedules, or we need to adjust how we deal with their time. But I think if we're going to take this seriously, we need to be creative.
I hear you, and my apologies if I wasn't exactly clear. We wouldn't be requiring or forcing them to take EAP at any certain time. It will be made available to them. And again, like I said, it's available at this time for anyone 24/7. To the point of overtime, I think I've heard that mentioned several times now. Our overtime is up. It is not, again, a relative term. It is not extreme. We do have operators that prefer to work more than others. So a lot of those things that you keep hearing refer to 13 and 14-hour shifts. A lot of that is paid time, not necessarily work time. So of that 13, 14-hour shift, there may be only 9 hours of work time, for example. Other times could be meal times, which are paid. So that's not considered work time, although it's paid time, as well as any time on what's called show up or standby when the operators are in the lounge.
Have you had any surveying done with like the transit workers to see how get their input on how they want to kind of solve these issues? And then I want to, after you answer that, I have a question back to my original question to David about what can we do now? Like, I do feel like time is of the essence with these issues. We don't want somebody to have a severe mental breakdown and, God forbid, to be an operator with a bus full of people. and they've been saying this to us, you know what I'm saying? Like and that'll just definitely blow back. So what can we do to help them? David or Mr. Bryant?
So, Madam Chair, I think that so certainly Byron had some good comments regarding their EAP and bringing them on site and doing some immediate types of activities for those that may want to participate and receive any type of assistance that they might need. As for anything, longer term, again, I'm not sure exactly what types of elements you might want us to look into. If you would let me know, I'll certainly do that.
I think I know the EAP is going to be there. I think that should be an ongoing thing. If we can also get them a bonus or some funds or something, because their issue partly is the pay.
Yeah, the legal part of the pay is certainly within the collective bargaining agreement. So lots of those things aren't quite as easy as they seem. Certainly, we did provide, or at least the management company has provided a $250 incentive for vaccinations. So for anybody that has received the vaccination or will receive the vaccination, that incentive is there. The city of Raleigh has also offered that incentive to its employees, as well as I think Wake County. Again, as far as pay items, that's a little more challenging, but again, I can look into that and bring that back. That's not something I can certainly talk to today.
Okay. If we can definitely look into seeing if we can get them some bonuses at least from the CARES funds, if possible. And any other like wiggle room holes, use it for, that perspective, I think that would be great. I know that there were some other council members authority members that had a question or comment. I thought I saw Jen's hand.
Yeah, I just have a question. When we're talking about drivers having to work overtime to fill route expectations and to fill our expectations, we're talking about a driver shortage. At what point do we have thresholds in place where either Byron, Mr. Bryant, or Mr. Eatman are giving us we need to have less routes or less frequency? Like at what point does this start impacting our service model? Certainly I don't want to reduce routes or reduce frequency either for our passengers or for our drivers to not get paid that they need, right? But it seems like if we continue down a path where we continue to have driver shortages, we continue to have people working lots of overtime, that means that we don't have enough people to service the routes or the number of buses that we have, whether we're talking about operators or maintenance or whatever. So what measurements are in place, and when would we get a heads up as the authority if we're nearing that line to need to not just postpone future routes, but talk about service decreases?
Yeah, I would say that those conversations have already certainly are starting internally, just so that we have the protocols in place of really a series of if-then statements. If this happens, then this happens. Byron, please correct me if I step out of line, but certainly overtime is a voluntary action beyond what's within the run pick. Generally, again, that is a voluntary overtime that we're seeing. If you start, having runs or absences which cannot be filled by voluntary overtime, then we're certainly going to see that. Byron, know that again we have seen some missed trips, as was stated earlier. You stated, but from a perspective of where we are in that process, that really depends upon the environment that we're in right now, and a lot of that could be. I know that at work here, we run into employees that have to be have to stay home due to a potential exposure. So they're not sick, but they still can't come to work because they could have potentially been exposed. And then it takes 48 hours for a test to come back so that you can be cleared. Byron, help me out, but I know that you've run across a lot of that, and those are a lot of the short hiccups that we're having currently. But overall, if we don't do our expansions, we seem to be reasonably okay at the moment, but that could change. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. But Byron, I need you to chime in on that.
But you're absolutely correct about the overtime and the voluntary status of that. And you're also correct about the current situation is not just, we are short on drivers. We are not as short as other agencies, save for what seems to be a bad spell, as Mr. Eatman is alluding to, with the Delta variant, exposures, people having to be out for those sorts of things. And it really does run the gamut. You have issues such as people who are out on FMLA or leave of absence for personal issues that we grant. Those things add up, and that combination of circumstances for our people does sometimes leave us a little short at the end of the day. We've actually got a great team and staff that work through that. And those things don't even include, the situations that pop up, the day-to-day situations where you got the sniffles and you're just not strong enough to come in and make it to work that day. But again, I think it was mentioned that by someone in public comment, maybe our supervisors drive. That's one of the reasons why most are required to have a CDL in this industry, so that there can be some of those backups in emergency situations to assist in making sure that we still do our best to make all the coverage that we can.
I would just close by saying that is something that we need to develop. We have been discussing internally, but we do need that benchmark as stated, so that when we start reaching a level of being unsuccessful at covering routes or runs, that we can make sure that we can communicate very quickly with the board and already have that in process of how we're going to work with all of our riders to make sure that transition, if it were to occur, happens the best way it can. So that's a point well taken. We'll go ahead and start making sure we work on that, and we would propose to get that out to the board well before, if it's ready, well before even committee meetings, if that's if we have an answer on that.
Thank you both.
Madam Chair, it's Karen Renge. We've spent a lot of time on all this. It's all very important. I'm trying to think of another department within the city of Raleigh where we have this many employees providing a service that have been, obviously COVID's affecting many different areas within, society, and everyone's dealing with the stress of COVID, our teachers, our nurses, et cetera. It doesn't diminish what's happening with our operators. And I sympathize. It seems to me that we need to make sure that the city council understands the seriousness of this. And perhaps what would be useful would be for someone from the authority to have a meeting with Councilor Corey Branch, since he is our representative for this board, and he's not hearing this. And maybe he already knows all this. I have no idea. But since we're supposed to be reporting to the council or sharing our views with them, since they're the ultimate deciders about such matters, that would be helpful to summarize the concerns we've heard today. And I'm not saying that the staff isn't working on it and that transit is not working on it. But I'm hearing a whole lot of concerns, and I think it just needs to be at their attention, particularly if we're talking about pay raises and really negatively impacting on an important service that the city provides.
I agree with you. Thank you, Karen. David, are you meeting with the whole city council next week, or is it just Corey, and can I join that meeting?
So it's probably just going to be some communication through the director to council, but certainly I'll see what's available.
Okay, if me and you maybe can see if we can schedule some time
I
to,
can certainly see if we can get on Mr. Branch's calendar.
thank you. And I know that Candace, Miss McDonald had something else she wanted to chime in and say, but she's muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to also respond. Byron, when they said that you know, the EAP and different things are available to us for it, that is correct. But aside from the EAP, there are other issues that, you know, in regards to being addressed: mental health, physical health, different things. EAP is broad for, you know, anything employee assistance may need. But we also, EAP is just basically like a counselor when you call them, and they'll report and say, yeah, they talk to us, but they'll say you have to go to, you know, a doctor or refer you to some type of physician or whatever your issue may be, which costs us money and may have to take time off. We're only allotted so many days off and everything. We don't want to feel penalized or feel like we're going to get in trouble or retaliated against because we had to go take care of us. And that is a big fear for a lot of operators, especially newer operators, well, across the board, and not just operators, maintenance, you know, staff in general, of feeling like our hands are tied, being able to handle a situation. There's some unfair things that we feel like, as far as the union or operators, that has been going on that, you know, has been touched on by Dwight and in different ones previously in other meetings and so on and so forth, and things that are going on behind the scenes that, you know, we try and handle it the political way within the company, but that also puts stress on the drivers and the you know, the staff over at Go Raleigh. And you don't want to feel like every day when you're going to work, is this going to be the day I get fired or the day that, you know, somebody curses me out, calls me out my name, and, you know, you blow up or whatever the situation is. So when I say I don't feel like we have a voice because it's like, okay, we'll discuss it, we'll move on to this, we'll move on to that, and nobody has a direct answer to say, oh, today this is what we're going to do. But there are situations that have been ongoing that have never been addressed, like I stated before, the abuse of the system in itself. We have and abuse the system, and like I said, those are ones that cause us problems. Well, you have a problem out on the road, you get to the office, you're going to have a problem. So it's like a trickle-down effect, and then you get home, you might have a problem or whatever. When you're addressing this situation, I would like for everyone to consider the broad spectrum of it, because it's not fabricated that obviously there's an issue going on over there. And we just want to be treated fairly, and we don't want to feel like because we speak up or because we address an issue that we have to feel like possibly we're going to be terminated or retaliated against. Everybody wants to be treated fairly. With the overtime, it is volunteer. It is where, okay, you don't have to do it outside of your schedule. But there's a lot of things that go on that you feel like I might need to go ahead and do this overtime, or I might not be able to get some next week or something. And those are like petty little issues that could be resolved, you know, to help relieve stress. But like I said, there's other issues going on. Our run pick has been messed up. Currently, the current run pick we were supposed to bid on it, and now because it's been pushed back, we're not able to do that run pick. So we're stuck in a limbo of a situation where, you know, it's a whole bunch of political stuff when we're just asking for people to just be human for a minute. Just understand that we're humans, and I want them to consider that when they're addressing this to the city or to whoever may be the one to make decisions for us. Come from behind the computer screen and know that we are. I haven't seen anybody, you know, except maybe a couple of city workers that get on these buses. So if y'all's not comfortable getting on the buses due to whatever reason, COVID, y'all's not parking y'all's cars, riding these buses, seeing, you know, how this service is working and going places other than from busway to downtown, or, you know, little short express routes and stuff. Get on there and ride the 15 in the #1 capital and, you know, the #7, and see how this bus system is and how it operates, and the stuff that we actually go through. You will have a better understanding of what we're going through. It's a bigger situation than what I could possibly put into words for you, but I don't want to see where my coworkers are breaking down and saying, oh, well, I don't think I can continue to do this job. This job isn't for everybody. And working with the public is a big deal, but we're not like civil servant workers as far as taking a test, like post office workers and different other companies and stuff. And we're the least talked about as far as frontline workers when it comes to this pandemic and issues going on. They talk about the nurses and different things like that. You got things going on in Iraq and Iran, you know, the military is a big deal and everything else, but you leave out the janitors and sanitation workers and the garbage men and the bus drivers and people that help move, you know, this whole operation when you're dealing with life in a spectrum. So I just don't want us to be left out, and I want our voice to be heard and for us to be treated fairly.
Thank you, Candace. I'll say that I'll make it my pledge. David, please, if you can, schedule a meeting when when Corey's available, and I'll take it to City Council to bring this issue myself. And if any other authority member wants to accompany me and David in that meeting to make sure that City Council is hearing what we're hearing, because not only do we want we're not saying this as a cliche and because we're behind the screen, we want our operators and our transportation workers to feel safe. We don't want to hear the pain that we're hearing in her voice. You know what I'm saying? Wanting to be treated like a human being, wanting to be considered. And we don't want to feel like we're here making decisions that may get kicked down the can. Maybe they'll be implemented. Maybe we'll be talking about the same thing next month when we really have to do something now. And and us having to deal with this issue is interfering in our ability to do our work as a transit authority. We've been talking about it's 5/11. We haven't gotten to one committee report or information item because this is serious and it's something that happens every meeting, and we need to let people's voices be heard, but we got to do something. So, I mean, I'll make my pledge. The best I can do is make sure that this gets to City Council, to bring them some options, to say, hey, these are some of our ideas to solve this issue, and not just tell them the problem, but also work with them, because they ultimately are going to be the ones that are going to give us the authority or do the authority themselves to make a change in this. We're the generals that get to hear the information, but the goal is we got to make sure they're hearing what we're hearing. So please let me know when you have an opportunity to schedule a meeting with Corey. Please make it available to the other authority members if they have an opportunity to be able to show up to give their input. And I don't want you to feel like you're not being heard, Ms. McDonald. We really will do our best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other authority member have anything to say?
Yeah, I would like to say something.
Yeah.
I am actually quite disturbed by this. Is like the last few months, there's been like a repeated theme of retaliation from management, and it's come through from many different people who've come before the council, and I don't know what's going on. But if there is retaliation, that needs to stop. That's not okay. People need to feel comfortable coming forward and expressing their concerns. They don't need to feel like they have to take this shift now so that they can get a shift later because that's what management is saying. That's not okay. People need to be treated fairly and without fear of retaliation. And I know that I feel really hot about that, but like it's not okay if people are feeling that way, and it's a theme that's been coming through multiple times. So there is an element of truth to it that needs to stop.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. Whatever, I mean, we're already dealing with a toxic environment in the world. You know, people don't want to then have to deal with that at every level of their life, including their job. So if there is, if Ms. McDonald or anybody is still on the line, if there are any retaliations to people stepping up and saying something happened, please bring that to us. Please let us know that that's happening, who is happening to. Empower that person to speak up for themselves. This did happen before. That person was rehired because we did make an issue of it. So we don't want you to feel like you don't have at least us on your side as allies, especially in something like that.
Thank you. It's just a matter of, you know, the rules apply when it comes to enforcing them towards us. And I'm speaking as a bus operator personally, but also as my colleagues feel. They can correct me if I'm out of line, but the rules apply to us. But if there is a situation on management's part, or maybe something that's not correct or fair, we have to fight tooth and nail. We have to get the union. We have to spend all this money fighting just to get what we feel is right. And then it's like these rules don't apply, or it's just, oh, well, you know, can you just work with us in a situation like this? Run pick is a big deal to us. You know, people have altered their lives. They have gotten daycare. They have done different things, and the service is not able to be performed. But this run pick was done, and people have already adjusted their schedules to this. And now we have to go back to something else and pick again and be stuck on the same runs that we're on. And, you know, that's exhausting. And there are different things that everything isn't worth the fight. You know what I mean? Like, just consider us and stop throwing this black and white in our face for everything, where at the end of the day, it seems like we're being penalized, or we have to just eat it and take the rules. And that's what the rules are. But when it comes to management, or, you know, even the citizens or the passengers, the rules can be bent a little bit. They can, you know, oh, be a human being, or have a little compassion, that type of thing. We want the same respect, and we want the same response as well.
Thank you, Candace.
Sure.
If there aren't any other comments, we're going to jump back to our agenda and try to get as much of it done as we can before we have to conclude this meeting. But in conclusion of that, I think in conclusion of all the public comments, a meeting with our
Dwight Spencer
has left the meeting.
A meeting with our liaison is important. So we'll definitely do that. Okay, so there's we have one staff information item, and that is on service updates.
Yes, Madam Chair. So I think this was actually a referred item out of the marketing committee. So this is a general update on several things that we've talked about today. One being delaying the R-Line service coming back, as well as our Route 6 and Route 70 package, which had increased service on Route 70 and lowering headways on Route 6 from 30 minutes to 15 minutes. The final item was regarding the deployment of electric buses, which I would say, if that has not already happened, will certainly happen next week. So we do have a couple of those completely service ready. So they will start hitting a bus rotation throughout the community. And again, I think they've been out and about in shorter periods already, but certainly next week that will really crank up until we have all 5 in full deployment throughout the city. Those are the 3 items that I think, again, were referred in committee. I have Mr. Walker standing by if there's any specific questions regarding the delay of the increase or bringing back the R-Line service, or keeping Route 6 and 70 at current service standards.
This is Karen Range. I'm the chair of the marketing committee. First of all, I want to encourage all the members of the Transit Authority to post on your own personal social media about the electric buses going into circulation next week. I think that's a it's a really cool thing. And, you know, it shows that we're really serious about going green and addressing climate change. It's a positive thing. So now if you need a photo of the electric buses, I'm sure that the staff can provide it, or I can text you a picture I took of one of our buses. Secondly, I am confused about, are we starting with the increasing service of up Glenwood, or is that being held? That's what I'm understanding now from what I heard in the comments previously today. But so
Yes.
when are we starting that?
So right now we are planning to hold any improvements in service, which would be lowering of headways on Route 6 from 30 to 15 minutes, and the expansion in service to Route 70 to Briar Creek until the new year. So that would be delayed.
Okay. That means all of any publicity we were going to do about that, which was part of my report, is being held, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And this is David Walker, City of Raleigh. Just a quick follow-up to that. We intentionally held up and did not do any promotion of the 70, Route 70 and Route 6 increases due to the fact of, you know, the known driver shortage, and we wanted to wait and see what things looked like as we got closer. We did have it planned for September the 12th, but we never published that date. We just talked about it coming soon because we had gone through the public engagement process and we had been talking about it and talking it up, but there was never a published date pushed out there. So just for what it's worth, there was some messaging that might have suggested we did that, but we have not.
Thank you, David. Are there any other questions or comments before we jump to our Finance and Policy Committee update? All right, Joshua, take it away.
All right. So first we talked about the Go Raleigh seating restrictions, which essentially the update was that they have lifted, as we've heard already, and that buses are at full capacity. Next, Morgan gave a presentation about finding public health guidance about public transit. She said that she was unable to find like a personal contact, but she was able to do some research and found some guidance from the NCDOT put out by the UNC School of Public Health about like the risk profiles of high occupancy areas, wearing a mask, being ventilated, and that kind of thing. The slide presentation is actually really good if you would like to go back and look through that. It's on the meeting minutes. She also reiterated the stuff we found from Harvard about the air changes per hour, and that OSHA recommends 4 to 6 air changes per hour, like all the air in the space being moved or recirculated, and she found data that said that the typical transit, in this instance, a rail car, but similar to a bus, has 15 air changes per hour. So that was good. And then there's a few other things that she had in that slide deck that I would recommend looking at. Next, David talked about bus air filtration, and I requested that he just give us a brief update about that in this meeting.
Yes. I apologize. I misunderstood and thought you wanted the update on the public health. I don't think we had any slides for the air filtration system. We have done some research. We're continuing to do additional research. One of the suggestions made earlier during public comment was, expanding the size of the filters on board the bus and using the UV technology. That's certainly one of the options out there. We have, done research and, found that APTA, the American Public Transportation Association, is actually not recommending any changes to, the current technologies on board the bus because there's no real valid data to support what, those technologies can actually do. Some of them actually take away from those air exchanges, so you increase the filter capacity, which means you slow down that that air exchange rate. So there's a lot of ongoing studies in this matter, and we're going to continue to stay on top of it, do some research, and we'll bring back another report next month on this topic.
Cool, thank you. Also, something else that we clarified was that the air comes in the bus through the air conditioning and then out, and then the air conditioning is pulling in fresh air.
Right, it does bring in fresh air.
The next thing we chatted about was the Go Raleigh RFP. Pull up my notes. So far, we've had the questions day where the companies came and asked a bunch of questions. 6 companies showed up to that. There were 90 questions, and Go Raleigh responded with 400 pages worth of responses to these questions. Have there been any other updates in the last week or so? I heard that we've extended the deadline, but
yeah, the only additional update would be what Mr. Eatman mentioned previously, was that we issued a third addendum to extend the proposal due dates by 1 week. So those that new due date is I believe it's the 21st, if not the 21st to the 22nd.
Just a quick question for that. Was that because we didn't get any responses or many responses?
The original due date was the 14th, so that date has not come yet.
Okay.
So we just had some, additional follow-up and additional requests to extend the due date to allow more time.
Sounds good. Cool. The last thing we chatted about was the bus stop amenity policy review. We are going to revisit that again this meeting, just briefly. At this point, Jen and I discussed, Jen, do you remember exactly what number we decided? Was it 3 boardings based off of the data?
I think they have the slides. I saw them. We were just looking at the slides, and I think we were somewhere in that 3 to 5 range. Felt like it hit the majority of sites.
Yeah. So for again, expanding we lowered the bus shelter boardings requirement to 10, and now we're just looking for that next threshold for a bench. And based off of the slides that they presented, we're leaning towards 3 to 5 boardings. This is when we would start considering a bench.
It's David Walker. We do have those slides if you wanted to roll through them, but considering the time, if you want to just keep that in the committee, and we'll continue that conversation there and possibly bring that back next month. But we are prepared to show those slides if you would like.
I think that's wise due to the time constraint and the not so urgent nature of the business. So that concludes the Finance and Policy Committee report.
Thank you, Joshua. All right, looks like
Things up next.
I think it's the route committee.
Madam Chair, can I go next, please? I my daughter has come home, and I'm already really over time and spending any time with her from college. I would really appreciate it if I could go.
Oh, you are next anyway.
Yeah, Karen Renge, a chair of the marketing committee. As I said, we're not discussing the Glenwood package promotion because that has been delayed. The staff is continuing the Wake Transit Plan ad campaign, the goal of which is to increase ridership. And so they are continuing to place ads in print and in radio and on billboards There's currently a billboard up on Capitol Boulevard south of 401. They are continuing to drive new, we're getting more, many more hits on the website. From July to August, there was a 4.5% increase in hits. And actually from August of 2020, there's been a 77% hit or increase in hits on the website. So that's excellent. We're continuing to do Tri-Transit Mondays on 101.5 and 99.9. And in the interest of time, I think we're going to skip playing the radio ad. We played a couple at the last meeting last month, but maybe we'll do that next month. And then most importantly, every year we do a Tri-Transit week, and traditionally it has been free transit to encourage people to ride the bus, but bus fare is currently free anyhow because of COVID. So the staff was trying to be creative and coming up with some other ways to build some excitement around the Go Raleigh bus system. And it will be running September 13th through the 17th. With Monday through Wednesday, with rider appreciation days, with freebies and tabling, and they're going to be handing out masks that say Go Raleigh on them. Thank you to Lulu Pay for that great idea. Thursday is going to be Transit Employee Appreciation Day and Try the Electric Bus. So, and that will also include giving gifts and meals to staff, which I think it couldn't come at a better time. And then Friday, I encourage everyone to come on down to the Go Raleigh bus station because there's going to be, a DJ and a photo booth and input boards to continue collecting input from riders. So anytime between, what are the times that you want us there, Andrea, on Friday the 17th?
We will begin at noon and we'll be there until 4 p.m.
Noon to 4. So if you get a chance, come on down and show some support and see what's going on. And again, I encourage you to put this on your own personal Facebook page or Instagram or whatever, as good Transit Authority members. And finally, I would like to market the fact that one of our board members had an important birthday recently, Nathan Spencer. I think he hit an important decade. So happy birthday, Nathan.
Happy birthday, Nathan.
I think my partner would probably say that I've hit 10, but that's okay.
All right.
Thank you for that,
Thank
Karen.
you. And I need to depart. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Nathan.
Cool. So I'll go through this fairly quickly because I think we covered most of this in terms of changes. The R-Line and Glenwood package that we've sort of increased service on are not going to be going into effect as of right now. We are providing IBMA service for the R-Line, but it's not going to stay in service as we had talked about. Excuse me. The 401X, we did some looking at. I apologize to try to coordinate schedules with other routes, and Go Raleigh has tried to line those times up with our other routes. We've been unsuccessful to line them up with Go Triangle routes, but that is a whole other can of worms. But the 401X is the route to Rollsville that hits Triangle Town Center. So the coordination now allows people to get off Rollsville, the line at Triangle Town Center, and jump on another bus to go downtown fairly quickly without much wait time. So we are pretty happy with that in the committee. The other thing, and we're not going to go deep into it because of this, because of the time of. I'm sorry. Did I hear a question? Okay. I'm not going to go into it too much right now we'll probably get a chance to look at this a little bit more, but Morgan and Ryan and some of the other staff supporting have created actually a really, really amazing tool that we gave some feedback on in terms of how to even make it better, but looking at where bus stops need to be, bus shelters, I'm sorry, need to be put in based on the opportunities and the impact and the usage. One thing I might throw in here is that as we start to look at this stuff, we may want to toss it over to finance and policy to look at whether we need to start looking at long-term, the idea of maybe taking the 10 boardings or less, or more rather, off of there, and really just looking at transit needs versus usage, like places where we need to start putting in bus stops, bus shelters, because the value to the community, the surrounding community, in the interest of getting folks there and back. Assuming, always, of course, with the fact that there's a limited budget of that we can spend on some of that. So we'll be coming back with that more. The committee will be looking at it, but needless to say, it's a tool that we think that the other departments are actually going to be able to use as a way to coordinate services and look at value of population based on housing or transit-oriented development and stuff like that. So we're excited by it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nathan. And I know that we added something to our agenda. David, you added, I think we were talking about our retreat.
Yes, Madam Chair. So we have been looking for dates that are available for the retreat. Right now, we have identified October 29th. We can certainly find other dates, but I would like, if it's okay, we're going to go ahead and just get that out via email to the entire board and get some responses back. We would propose that would be a virtual event and would be most of the day, probably from about 9 a.m. to about 4 p.m. It will be virtual, so no lunch or snacks, unfortunately. I had put in an email that maybe we can do Uber Eats or Grubhub or something. Just kidding, but anyway, we'll have to make sure that everybody coordinates lunches and we can have a virtual lunch together. But we'll work on the agenda. Again, looking for October 29th. We're going to get that email out also with a draft agenda, but just wanted to give the board a heads up on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, David. And I think that wraps us up. Do we have any extra comments or concerns from the authority? All right. Yeah, that I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, I also wanted to also say that I did get a little bit of communication from Councilor Branch, and he said he would be happy to meet. So I'll be working on setting that up, and I will be in touch. Okay.
All right, perfect. I was just gonna say I'll circle back with you next week.
Thank you.
On that, if I don't hear back from you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, perfect. If there's nothing else from any of the rest of the authority or staff, thank you for your time today. We're going to call this meeting to conclusion at 5:38 p.m. September 9th. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Please be safe and go hug your families.